Before we get to episode 155, I'd like to mention Giving Tuesday and ask for your support of the Keystone Chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. Go to supportkeystonechapter.org and scroll down a little bit. You'll see a box where you can plug in an amount of money you feel comfortable with giving. Check out. It's all handled through PayPal, and we really do appreciate your support. Again, that's supportkeystonechapter.org. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the iCantCU podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 155 of the iCantCU podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for this episode, and it is dropping, and I'm recording it on Thanksgiving here in the U.S., so if you're celebrating Thanksgiving today, happy Thanksgiving to you. I guess if you don't know what Thanksgiving is and you're somewhere else in the world, it's the fourth Thursday, I should say, of November. Everybody eats too much and watches football and parades and things like that and then takes a nap. I don't think I ate too much, actually. I'm actually recording this after dinner, but before dessert. I had pre-dessert, which was peanut brittle, which Liz makes, and it is awesome. She made it for someone, and I stole a couple 100 grams of it for Jane and I. Jacob and Liz don't eat it. But it is delicious, and the people that she made it for were very appreciative of it. It was for somebody at Walden School where she teaches, and they love it. So, and that's why she made it. So I do have a few things to talk about, and of course, I'm going to start off with a fantasy sports update, which probably a minute or two I'll talk about it. So if you want to just fast forward, if you're not liking the fantasy update, but I should mention this: if you haven't watched the video yet of our fantasy football league, the All Blind League, it's iCantCU.com/football. And it's a little over 4.5 minutes long. And it was a great deal of fun when we did this. We were up in New York. It happened over a couple days. The draft only happened, over the course of a day. But we were together. The folks in the league were together for a couple of days. We got to go out to dinner a couple of times and hang out all day when we were on set. For the draft, it was just unreal, the amount of people, and I was talking about it last night, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. But give it a look. iCantCU.com/football. iCantCU.com/football. I know it sounds like a whole sentence, right? But it's only 7 letters long. iCantCU. iCantCU. So check it out. I broke 2 streaks this week, one in football and one in hockey. After 3 games in a row losing in football, I won. Hooray! Because Daniel Jones had an awful Monday night, and I thought it was going to be close, but I ended up winning by like 10 points. So I am still in third, but now I am in third behind the first place Pug Posse and second place Montreal Beavers. Pug Posse beat my birthday brother, Nick, who is the perennial champ. The Montreal Beavers, he beat him. We both had birthdays on November 21st. That's why I say birthday brother. And so it wasn't a happy birthday, I guess, for him since he lost. But I'm still in third because I have less points than both Nick and Pug Posse. Frank, we're all 1 game ahead of Brian, whose team name is called Astoria Knights. And just 3 games left. So I think I only have to win 1 more game to solidify a playoff spot. And we'll see. I'm projected to win this week, but those projections aren't always, 100% or 50% even. So in hockey, I broke a streak too, but it was on the other end. I lost it. Again, I was projected to win most of the week. And the last day or two, I guess it was the last day, Sunday, our games go Monday to Sunday. The last day I had one of my guys get hurt. Instead of scoring points, he, racked up an injury. So no points from him, and that cost me. I ended up losing by, I think, around 8 or 10 points. But I'm still in first place in the hockey. And I'm playing Hanson Brothers hockey, which is Brian, and I'm projected to lose. So we'll see how that goes. I keep picking up people to make sure I have enough guys to play because Brian's team had a lot more games their players were going to play a lot more games than my team. And, that kind of makes it hard to win when his team, I think, was supposed to play 52 games. My team was supposed to play like 40 or 42 games. So, even if those 10 games, he only gets a few points per game, that's still that much more that you have to make up, of course. But it is a lot of fun, and I really do enjoy playing. So, and if you don't do any kind of fantasy sports and you're blind or visually impaired, again, just like the video says, the Yahoo Fantasy app is amazing and just about 100% accessible. I don't want to say 100% because I know there are some things that, are harder to find. And the one thing you won't find is, something being labeled as button. It'll tell you what it is. And there's nothing more frustrating than when you're dragging your finger around your phone and you hear button, 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 and you wonder what all those buttons do. Sometimes I just start pressing them. So if I've done something to harm you by pushing those buttons, that's not on my end. It should have been labeled. So I did want to talk about a couple of things today, and both revolve around Thanksgiving. Over the last few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, our friends Mark and Jen have had this little get-together at their house. Now, of course, they didn't have it last year because of COVID. And a few weeks ago, Mark had talked with me and said, would you feel comfortable if we did it again? Would you come? And I said, I would. And I said, let me talk to Liz. And I kind of twisted her arm because she wasn't as comfortable with it as I was. But, I twisted it enough to, get her to say, yeah, she would go. She's around all those carriers of germs, those little kids. Come on. Nobody spreads more than those things, right? If you have kids, because they brought you home some special things over the years, right? Over their short lifespan, they brought you home all sorts of stuff. So once Liz said yes, I texted Mark back and said, yeah, we're good to go. So Mark and Jen had us over with a few other families, last night. And it's always nice because, first of all, it's always nice to get out of the house to do something other than run into a store, look around, and then leave and come home without without touching anything or doing anything. And so it was good to be around other people, and we saw some folks that we hadn't seen, obviously, in a couple of years. Now, I did see Jen back when we got Ziggy back in January of this year because she had some things that, they also have dogs. So they had an extra crate, and they also bought us a couple of gifts for Ziggy, a bone and plastic bone with these like bumps on it that he didn't like right away when his mouth was tiny, but now that he's grown up and is 65, 70 pounds, he likes it, and he will dig into his toy box to find this bone and pull it out and start chewing on it. So it was nice to be with them and see them and the other folks that go. But at one point they were talking about, Mark was looking at a label. I think it was beer. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was a beer label to see, what it was called or what was included in the ingredients. I don't remember exactly why he was looking at it. But he was moving it further and further away from his face. And one of the other folks there said, yeah, keep moving it back, because, as folks get older, evidently they have to hold things further away. And so then the talk became about seeing and not seeing. And, Mark was saying how he has to have readers on him all the time. And as everybody is talking about it, I'm thinking, man, I'd love to see as bad as you guys. And, and I didn't chime in because, I didn't want to be the Debbie Downer and say, hey, yeah, that'd be great if I could just put on some glasses and see something like that. But I just think it's interesting. And it made me think back to when I had a trabeculectomy, trab for short, back in 2003. And when the doctor who did it, his name was Rick Wilson, at Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia, he had said, he had done something, and I forget exactly what, did something to make it so that whatever I saw, I wouldn't need, and at the time I saw a little bit better than I did now. I was still able to read a little bit, stuff printed, larger print I was able to read without any kind of glasses. And over the next couple of years after that, my vision just deteriorated, as I think it's doing now. But, we're not going to get into that now, and I'll talk a little more in a few minutes about that. But he said, all your friends, and, 2003, I was, 40 years old. He said, all your friends are going to be to the stage that they're going to need something like this, or readers, when they get, a little older, in like 10 or 15 years or so. And so now it's all coming true. So it made me think of that, and made me think of this doctor, because I really like this doctor. And I don't remember if he had bad knees or a bad hip. I think it was a bad knee, and he had to have knee replacement, and he never returned to practice after he had that. And, he was my glaucoma guy, and I have a different guy now since then, because, like I said, he never came back. But it was just interesting to hear the folks saying how frustrating it is when you can't see something. And, I think a lot of times folks take things like their vision for granted. And, it was, I just kept thinking, welcome to my world. I mean, I'd love to see, what's written on that bottle. And I found out this week, for example, we ordered 2 different kinds of teas from a company called T2, like Terminator 2, but this is actually T. It's the letter T and the number 2. And I forget where they're based. I want to say South Africa, but not 100% sure. It's not important. I have been searching for a tea that I like for the morning that that has little to no caffeine, whether it's green or white. I used to drink one from Tivana that I loved, and I drank it for years and years and years. It was a combination of Queen of Babylon and Rose Garden, and then they discontinued Rose Garden, which had rose petals in it and things like that. They discontinued that, so then I just, instead of mixing Rose Garden and Queen of Babylon, I just used Queen of Babylon. And I was using the loose tea, which I also like the loose tea because you can adjust it to, sometimes 3 tea bags aren't enough, but 4 are too many. With loose tea, I weigh it out, and and really 7 grams is what I use for 24 ounces of water of the teas from Tivana. I'm sorry, from T2. It was more when I was drinking the Queen of Babylon, and I missed the Queen of Babylon. It was great. It was a white tea, so it had a little bit of caffeine in it, and it had like cherry bits and pomegranate seeds and a couple other fruits in there, and it tasted great, and it made me feel great, and that's what I've been looking for. So once that went away, I started drinking Youthberry from Tivana, and then they closed all their shops, and the loose Youthberry was gone, but they still had it in tea bags. Okay, so I'd have basically a box of 20 tea bags. It lasted me a week. And they discontinued that also. So now I'm searching again. So I got 2 different kinds of teas from T2. One is called Rosa Frambrosia, which has, just like Rose Garden, has, rose petals and some other fruits and stuff like that in there. That's a seasonal one, though. And last year when I got that, I loved it and I thought it was great. But then, by the end of whatever season, however long they keep it on the market, it's a limited time thing every year. So they stopped it, so I didn't have it. And then I was looking around, and then I started to have to look again. So Jane used to be able to go into, they had a couple of stores in New York, which they've since closed since COVID. And, she would go in and get me something and, either bring it home or we'd get it when we go to see her. And she was in Soho a month or 2 ago and she said, I'm going to walk over to T2 and get something. And then she gets there and notices the store is closed. And, I think she said the signs were down and everything. So they're obviously not, they weren't just closed for the day or the week, they were closed forever. So, I thought, okay, well, I'll just order online. And they had free shipping over $35, 100 grams of Rosa Frambrosia, is, I think, $12. So it wasn't crazy expensive because, I get, like I say, if I do 7 grams, and, sometimes I make a mistake and I put, 8 grams in or 9 grams, if I can't tell how much is on the spoon when I dump it in. Once it goes into the strainer, I don't take it back out. So if I put a little too much in, that's on me, and, it's just a little bit stronger. And again, it doesn't, taste, might taste a little more, have more taste than, if it had 7 grams, let's say. So all along, we got 3 different kinds of teas. Got Rosa Frambrosia, pumped up pomegranate or something like that, and a chai that Jane wanted to try. And so I made sure the chai was on the bottom because I didn't want to make a mistake and use that, because that's, chai has normal caffeine levels like black tea. And I didn't want to, start the day off with that. I have been drinking black tea since I can't find, the Tivana youthberry, but I prefer not to. So I opened what I thought was the Rosa Frambrosia, and it smelled great. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. And after a couple of days of drinking it, I noticed I didn't feel 100%. But I noticed it took, as they say, took the edge off. And I thought, this, is it the tea? And I kept drinking it. And I thought, this is great. And I'm thinking, this is, I'm going to have to order more. I'll have to see if it's available in a larger package. I'll have to get a bigger tin to put it in. And I thought that's awesome, that I felt this great. So I go through and I finish that after... it was more than 10 days or 15 days worth, because part of that I was away for the NFB of Pennsylvania convention and stuff like that. So once I finished it, I thought, okay, now I have to open the other box. So, the Rosa Frambrosia was great. I'm going to have to open the other box. And I open the other box and I smell it. I'm like, it doesn't smell as strong as the Rosa Frambrosia. And I'm like, let me make sure I have the right one and I'm not opening the chai. Well, when I looked at the box and I used one of the apps, and I don't remember which one I used. I want to say I used Seeing AI, but it was either Seeing AI or Envision. And Seeing AI, by the way, is a free app if you want to try that out, to have stuff read to you. And I was going to suggest this last night when Mark was talking about, having trouble reading the labels, but I didn't want to bring the attention to me not being able to see and have everybody feel bad for talking, hey, I can't see until I put these readers on, or blah, blah, blah. So I didn't mention it. So, when I hear what I had been drinking, or what I was about to drink, put into the tin that, the next, 12 or 14 days of drinking, that was the Rosa Frambrosia. I had been drinking the pumped up pomegranate or pumping pomegranate, whatever it was called. And, my birthday was on Sunday, so I guess I started this tea on Monday. So it's been 3 or 4 days. Now, part of the problem when I eat any kind of sugar, that bothers, the psoriatic arthritis. So I drank the tea on Monday. I didn't feel great. It didn't make me feel any better than when before I drank it, and the whole day I felt pretty crappy. I thought, well, I did have that big piece of birthday cake the day before. Maybe that's it. So then I have the tea on Tuesday. Same thing. It didn't, I still felt as crappy all day as I had whether I drank the tea or not. So Wednesday comes and I thought, okay, I've been eating this birthday cake and we finally finished it. I guess we finished it on Tuesday. So I had it Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Finished it on Tuesday. So, maybe Wednesday I would feel a little better, and I didn't. And so I'm wondering, and I'm actually grateful that I realized the pumping pomegranate was probably better than the Rosa Frambrosia, which is great because the pomegranate is available. It seems like it's an all year thing. I'm hoping. I never ordered a bunch of it, so, we'll see. But I do love it. It tastes great. I don't put sugar or any kind of sweetener in. With any tea, I don't put any kind of sweetener in. Black tea, I put lemon in. When I get done recording this, before I have an actual dessert, which will be apple crisp, which I'll talk about in a minute, I just put lemon in black tea. And that's it. And I put a lot of lemon in. So usually in my iced tea, I put 3 lemons. So, yeah, I mean, some people might call that an Arnold Palmer without sugar, but it's also a lot of tea. But in the morning, it's 24 ounces is my mug. So once I finish or get near to finishing the Rosa Frambrosia, I will go back and see if there's a larger option for the pumping pomegranate or pumped up pomegranate or whatever it's called. And again, it just made me feel great. But I started to think about it last night when Mark was reading the label and how I had messed up with reading the label. And it just happens. I just didn't stack them right after I had read them when I put them in the cabinet. And, I was frustrated by it. But, in this instance, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't a horrible mistake. As Jane said, once I told her that I had been drinking the pomegranate over the Rosa Frambrosia, she said, "Oh, well, congratulations. I guess we know what T2 is going to discontinue any minute now because that's our MO. When we like something, it usually gets canceled, discontinued, whatever. Everybody thinks this cancel culture just started. For us, it's been our entire lives." So it was a nice evening at Mark and Jen's. And again, it was great to be out and about with friends and to see everybody again and catch up with, what their kids are doing. Our kids, Jacob and Jane, are older than everybody else's kids there. Some of their kids were in college. Some are young. Some, Mark and Jen's son, Matthew, is just in high school. And stuff like that. So it's, we're at different stages and they're also a little bit younger, than Liz and I. Liz is a few years younger than me and Mark is, a couple years younger than her and so forth. But it was nice. It's just, again, it's so nice to get out with friends and be around friends. Anymore when I do something or think of something, I always say, was that worth getting COVID over? And that one was. There's some concerts coming up that I'd like to go to, and I'd think of the artist, and I think to myself, if I went there and got COVID after seeing the show, would that be worth it? And again, the person or band might be a great show, but it's not somebody that I'd be willing to risk getting COVID for. Same thing goes with when we go to Costco, and Liz usually goes to Costco without me anymore, but when we would go to Costco and get the samples, which they brought back out, which, I love the samples. After I eat it, I would say to Liz, I said, yeah, that was worth COVID, or no, that wasn't worth COVID. Knock wood, I haven't gotten it yet. Let's hope the yet never comes. Jane actually, when she came home, she got a PCR test. I think it's called PCR. Same thing I did twice, once before the video shoot in New York, because we had to have a negative test within 72 hours of being on set. And then I did it, as I mentioned before, a couple days after I got back because I felt crappy in the car ride, from the hotel to Penn Station. And it, as I said before, I think it was from being, I was hunched over looking at my phone. And again, I don't know why I do that, because I was looking at my phone, not because I have to read something on there because I can't see it. I don't know why I was looking at the screen. I could be looking out the window and just listening because I had my earbuds in and whatnot. But I didn't have it either time. I was negative both times. Lucky for us, Jane was also negative when she had it done the other day. She was at a funeral for a friend's mom, and the friend called her and texted her or whatever, somehow communicated to her that somebody at the funeral had tested positive for COVID. It was well after the funeral, 4 or 5 days after, so they weren't sure the person was positive when they were at the funeral. So, at this point, it seems like Jane is in the clear because, that was around 2 weeks ago now. So then we come to today, Thursday, Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving for us over the years has been different now than it was, when Liz and I first got married, we were going to her parents' house. And it usually was after we closed the video store. We were open. Everybody complains today, oh, you're open Thanksgiving. That's wrong, blah, blah, blah. We had a video rental store, West Coast Video, if you've heard of that. They were franchises. We had a franchise in Delaware County in Brookhaven. And, it was my choice. And it was my choice because when we first opened, rentals were overnight. And the day before Thanksgiving was hugely busy. It was one of the most counted on days of the year for us to know whether it's snowing or raining or sunny. We knew the day before Thanksgiving was going to be busy. It always was, just like New Year's Eve was always busy. Didn't matter what the weather. Now, if you get a stretch in the winter where you got a lot of snow forecasted, also very helpful for video rentals. So I didn't want to, and also the rentals were, because they were overnight, they had to be brought back the next day. If we were closed, then that means it would be a free day. I didn't want to do that. I didn't have anything else to do. I don't have brothers and sisters. My parents usually went to Florida for a good chunk of the winter, sometime in early November. And, like I said, we could go to Liz's parents' house after we closed and get dinner. And that's what we did. And sometimes we'd get dinner quickly and then go to a movie. Sometimes we would just get dinner and hang out because, it was a, kind of like an open house thing. And, it was always fun. And, there was, bing, bang, boom. We could be in and out, or, we could hang out for a while. And that was always fun. Once we moved into our house and media, we had enough space that we could start hosting. When we first got married, we were living in a townhouse. We had a kitchen table, which had 6 seats. So we could have had a few people over, but it wasn't like it was once we got to media. So once we had the house and media and we had our dining room set, which I think at its fullest, we could seat 14 at it. Now we only had 12 chairs. Maybe it's 12 and we only had 10 chairs. I don't know. We had a bunch of chairs, and then we used kitchen chairs for the rest. And the kitchen chairs were pretty nice, so it wasn't that much of a downgrade. But the table was big, and so we were able to have both our parents over, both sets of parents, and Liz's sisters, and she has 2 sisters, and a friend of Margaret's who was kind of like a brother to the family. So, we all fit. And then, once her one sister got married, the husband came down and maybe even before, maybe, they came down even when they were dating. I don't remember. It's, 25 years ago or so, maybe more. And so as our family grew and her sister Suzanne's family grew, more people were coming. And then, then once Margaret started dating someone, the fiance would come, and then, of course, we had kids. The kids and Suzanne had kids, and so more and more and more. At the peak, we probably had 20 or more people at Thanksgiving. And then it started going the other way. Other folks had other things going on. Sometimes Suzanne went to Colorado, or at least her husband did. Stuff like that. And so it started, and then of course then it got sad because, my dad died, and then Liz's dad died, and, and it started shrinking. It started, and then we moved to the condo in Swarthmore, and I think one year, we had Margaret and her daughter Megan over. I think the first year we were there. But since then, I think it was just the 4 of us, and it was great. We loved it. So that's what we've been doing now. And this year was no different. We did, it was just the 4 of us. And to be honest, the table that we have in our kitchen, again, it's small, and our kitchen is small. So, we have no dining room. The kitchen and dining room were combined in this house at some point along the way. And it's fine because we don't expect to be, hosting a whole bunch of folks. So it was just the 4 of us this year, which was nice. Now, the last couple of years, we've gone to Cracker Barrel and gotten most of the stuff or all of the stuff. Well, this year, we were just going to get a couple of things from there, and Liz was going to make a couple of things. Well, one of the things we were going to get from Cracker Barrel was their hash brown casserole, which everybody loves, but you couldn't get it because they weren't sure they were going to have the shredded potatoes, which when Liz was told that just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's a whole bunch of potatoes. You can get them. But evidently, the way they make them from the ones that are already shredded. And so we decided that Liz would just make it all. It is also the first Thanksgiving in my memory, and Liz thought the same, we didn't have turkey. And I don't know that I've ever had a Thanksgiving without turkey. We had ham this year. It was kosher ham. No, it wasn't, because there's no such thing. But it was the first year we didn't have turkey. And the kids both wanted ham. I was okay with it. It doesn't matter to me. I like both. Now, when Liz used to make it on the grill, when we lived in media, she would, smoke it. It was always really good. And but we didn't have it this year. And we had the ham, which we bought from Honey Baked Ham, which is always awesome. And we're looking forward to leftovers with sandwiches and stuff like that. And honestly, I think I like the leftover ham better for sandwiches than the leftover turkey. Not that the turkey would have lasted that long, and not that the ham will last us that long also. So we did that. Now, I should also mention that Jane once had pizza on Thanksgiving. Now, it was 4 years ago, Thanksgiving. She was in Paris. And of course, the fourth Thursday of November in Paris is, just another Thursday. It's not Thanksgiving in France. So she had pizza that night. And I just think that's kind of funny. But today, as Liz is getting ready and she's making these things and making all the stuff, and she made everything except for the ham, like I said. And the ham, she just took out of the fridge. So that was easy. That part was easy. And it should have been as easy for some of the other stuff. But she made these things called Palmiers. And a Palmier is, an elephant ear or pig's ear, if you're familiar. But these are savory ones that one of the folks on Food Network that we absolutely love is Garten. And it's got to be from 15 or 20 years ago. She did an episode of making these savory Palmiers with a sun-dried tomato, basil, and Parmesan cheese mixture. And it was awesome. Everybody always loved them. She made them for more than Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving was one of the times. I think she made them once or twice when we had Super Bowl parties and stuff like that. So, so basically you take the puff pastry, you use puff pastry, and you put the mixture in, and then you roll it up, and then you cut them in, and they look like, little palm tree leaves or elephant ears, like I said, and they are awesome. Now, this year, Liz had trouble finding the puff pastry at the supermarket, so she got puff pastry from Trader Joe's. So that made it a little bit less good. The puff pastry just wasn't as good, it seemed, as, the normal puff pastry. Not that we ate a lot of them, and there were a lot of them. And again, Jane and I are the only ones that really eat them. Liz isn't too fancy for them, and Jacob doesn't like them at all. Well, Liz was transferring from the baking sheet that they were on to a plate, and she was holding it, and the plate tipped, and she almost dropped the plate. Well, she didn't drop the plate, but all of them slid off onto the floor. And of course, Ziggy was in there, and Ziggy was on top of it. So we're hoping, and they were hot, and that was the one thing we were worried about. Everything else about it we thought would have been okay. Sun-dried tomato, the cheese isn't great for them because it's very high in fat. But otherwise, everything else was okay for him, again, except for the temperature that they were. And he ate at least one and then ended up throwing it up. So we don't know if it burned his mouth or his throat. He's still eating, and he will still come into the kitchen to look for something. And I'll get to that in a second. So hopefully he's okay. So there were basically 5 of them for Jane and I to share, which was fine because I think Liz made like 20 of them. So we didn't have to worry about eating 20. And I would have been super full because eating those, I ate 3. Eating the 3 and then eating dinner, I was pretty full. And so we were all worried a little bit about Ziggy. Now, he will come up to us, depending on where we're sitting, if it's in the living room or the kitchen, and he'll put his paw on you. When he does that, that means he wants something. And he's saying, please. Sometimes he wants to go out. Sometimes he wants something to eat. So I will usually say, when he does that, I'll say, what do you want? And sometimes he'll look around, or, he'll get up. I'll say, do you want to go out? And I'll stand up, and he'll still be sitting down. And I know that's not what he wants. And I'll say to him, show me. And he'll take me into the kitchen. I'll follow him in, and he'll look up. He'll either look up at the bananas, or he'll look up to the cabinet where we have certain things like pita chips and we had these non-crackers from Trader Joe's that were awesome. And we've had them from other places, but the other places that we bought them at the supermarket, they're in a bag. So they get all busted up because they're pretty delicate. He really liked those. So we finished them. Liz, he loves potatoes. Liz got these little, I don't want to say fingerlings because these are more round, but the little tiny ones, almost one bite, most of them, which he loves. And Liz will sometimes, when she makes those, we'll put some aside for Ziggy. So he saw them all week sitting on this rack, high up so he couldn't get them. Not that he didn't try by trying to step on it and climb up a little bit. But he would always come in and look, and I would always say, look, buddy, these are for Thursday. You'll get some on Thursday. And so today, once they were made, he was very happy. And he was eating those. In fact, right before I came down, he was eating them. I gave him one. So hopefully he's okay. So we're a little worried about that because you always hear the horror stories around the holidays of, the dogs eating something they shouldn't and then causing all sorts of problems. And but hopefully everything is good with Ziggy from that. But it also, thinking back to Thanksgivings, in the past and how it's different now for us, thinking about the times where my folks would come over and my mom always made a couple of things. She always made a sweet potato thing that everybody loves. So she was always in charge of that and in charge of the cranberry sauce, which I absolutely loved. And she was making that since I was, probably like 5 or 6 years old. And a few years ago, once they moved into Maris Grove, she was still making it. And we went across the street to there's a supermarket across the street, like a little local chain called Fresh Market. Well, they make it. It's almost identical to what she made. And it had, I don't remember if the one at Fresh Market had it, but it has like, bits of apple. And I know my mom had orange bits in it and stuff like that. And it was almost identical, the one from there. So, once we found that and we bought a container of it and I took it over to her, I said, Mom, try this. It's almost as good as yours. And of course it's, it was always a big ordeal, especially as my mom was getting older and, to have her cook it. And then it was hard for her to lift some of the heavy pots and stuff like that. She had arthritis, very bad in her hands. And, stuff like that would make it hard for her to stir or to lift and stuff like that. So once we found that, I said, look, you can stop making it. We'll just get this. It's, it's almost as good. Liz's mother loved it. It was always good. It was, and Liz would always buy the, the can of cranberry sauce, at the store, because a few people like that as well, where it comes out like, when you do the canned dog food, you hear that vacuum sound as it plops out. But Liz would buy that as well. But I always loved the stuff my mom made and then at Fresh Market. We didn't have cranberries this year. She wasn't, we're not out there very often, and so we didn't get it. So I'm sure if I wanted, in the next couple of days, we can go out there and get a container of it, and I could eat it. It's, I know when my mom made it, it had plenty of sugar in it. So, but I've just been thinking about how different Thanksgivings have become, since I was a kid, and always just, thinking about when I was a kid, going to my aunt and uncle's house and doing, getting together with the family there. And then we used to host it, meaning my parents and I mean, I wouldn't host it. I'd, play with my cousins when everybody came over, and to what it is now where it's, like I said, just the four of us. And then thinking back to what folks were saying last night about, their vision and whatnot. And, the bottom line to me is this. You just have to be thankful for what you've got at that moment. Sometimes in the future it might be better, and sometimes it might not be. And, and that's, I guess that's what's, what to live by. I've also realized in the past week that I react better when somebody tells me I can't do something than when somebody says, oh yeah, you could do that. I for whatever reason, I don't know if it's, the negativity of it. I don't know what it is. But when somebody says, oh, you can't do that. And maybe part of it has to do with my vision issues. and somebody saying, "Oh, blind person can't do that," and believe me, blind folks get it all the time. And I think I mentioned it last week. There was a couple of folks at the convention where they had to prove that they could take care of their own kid, their own baby that they had, before they would be allowed to leave the hospital with it. Nobody else has to prove. The crack addict who has 7 kids, who is just having them to have them, they don't have to prove anything. But the blind person, the blind mom, has to prove that they can. Somebody's got to observe and, oh, you can take care of a kid? Just ridiculous stuff like that. So I realized this week that, so if you want me to do something, tell me I can't do it. And maybe I can't, but I'm going to try. And I think I've done that my entire life. And again, I don't know if that's just my personality or if it's due to my vision issues. But yeah, the negative support. And I know my dad used to do it to me all the time. I would tell him, "Yeah, Dad, I'm going to lose some weight." "Oh, you can't do that." And then I would, because I wanted to prove him wrong. And then he was always happy when I did. So that is all I have for you for Thanksgiving 2021, which is crazy. It's I feel very old now that I've run another year on the round the sun circuit, I guess I could say. Didn't know where I was going with that. But I do appreciate you listening. I am thankful for you listening to this episode. It's been episode 155 of the iCantCU podcast. My name is David, at David Benj. Before I go, I would like to remind you, Giving Tuesday is this coming Tuesday. Please go to supportkeystonechapter.org and make a donation to the Keystone Chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. I do appreciate that. And if you would share the podcast, if you think it's worthy enough, with your friends and family and coworkers and whoever that might benefit from learning and getting a perspective of a blind guy in a sighted world and how things go, I'd appreciate that as well. Rate and review if you have a minute to do so. Again, if you're going to rate it 1 star, please leave a review so I know why you think it sucks. I'd love to know that. And why you think it's good if you want to as well. But I would like to know. And again, any kind of questions, comments, show ideas, please reach out, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a message. You have 3 minutes. 646-926-6350. Again, 646-926-6350. Please leave your name and town and whatever you have to tell me. And again, I'll probably use it in an upcoming episode unless it's you screaming something that nobody can understand. But I would probably even put a little bit of that on as well. I do appreciate you listening. Show notes will be available at iCantCU.com/155. Remember, iCantCU sounds like a whole sentence. It is only 7 letters long. iCantCU.com/155. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Be well, stay safe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.